Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to inspire him to seek your company. My favorite way to inspire my husband to seek my company is to stop repelling him and start attracting him, as in, no need to ask, remind, or beg for his company because he's already sitting right next to me. My guest Inga was full of boiling anger and resentment that her husband was always putting her down, saying she was wrong and criticizing her parenting. Then she got a glimpse of hope that she could improve her marriage single-handedly. Today, she is madly in love with her husband, and she's going to tell us how she did that. I'll also be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is so breathtakingly bad, I was speechless when I first read it, and it comes directly from a widely syndicated advice columnist. All that is coming up, but first let's talk about inspiring your man to seek your company. Around here, the TV seemed to be the main problem. If I could just get rid of the TV, I would get a lot more of my husband's attention, or so I believed. Other women report that their husbands play video games incessantly, or work 117 hours a week, or have poker games every night. Sometimes it's surfing or golf or helping his mother. Either way, she never gets his time and attention. It's lonely and frustrating. But there's plenty you, as a wife, can do to change the situation, and you'll both be happier for it. Here's how to inspire your man to pay attention to you, not just dutifully, but because he's drawn to you and can't resist you. He'll seek out your company. Here's an example. If he's watching sports, it might be tempting to tell him to stop or even to turn off the TV. My idea was to throw our TV off of a cliff. But instead, consider following his lead. I don't mean that you should sit with him and watch sports too. No, I mean that you could find something to do that makes you feel just as happy. When you find yourself thinking that he's lazy, consider it a reminder that it's okay to be lazy sometimes and kick back yourself. If you're thinking, but I can't because of the kids or work or laundry, well, that's just what I thought too. I believed that if I goofed off as much as he did, everything would fall apart. I was a self-appointed martyr who had to keep everything together. And part of keeping it together was telling him how long he had been watching TV and letting him know it was time to turn it off and get off the couch. Yeah, I really said embarrassing things like that. It gets worse, actually. I also said that he shouldn't be watching so much TV because it was bad for him. In other words, I was an unpleasant toothache of a wife. Imagine you have the choice to spend time watching TV or spend time with a toothache. Which would you choose? Well, exactly. My husband was ignoring me because I had become resistible. A big part of my resistibility was control. I was always telling him what to do and how to do it. As in, you could unload the dishwasher since you're just sitting around. And then, if he did unload the dishwasher, which was pretty rare back in those days, I would give him instructions like, that goes with the mixing bowls, not the cereal bowls. And then I would say, how many resumes did you send out today? None? Well, what did you do today? Even a supermodel would start to seem pretty unattractive by this point. The issue wasn't that TV was so gripping to my husband. He wasn't so much ignoring me as soothing himself with the TV. My husband was married to a porcupine, and whenever he interacted with me, he was getting pricked. What made me so painful to be around was my incessant attempts to control him. He could hear the fearful subtext loud and clear. I might as well have been screaming, "You're stupid and incompetent." Nothing ruins the intimacy faster than control. But here's the good news. When I relinquished inappropriate control of him, he wanted to hang with me again. When I first started trying to be more trusting, I felt like a complete mess most of the time. I was so scared, which makes sense because the root of the urge to control is fear. So every time I told him what to do, it was because I was afraid. Afraid I would have to work harder, pay more, wait longer, drive in traffic, or be lonely if I didn't control things. When I decided to stop indulging my fear and choose my faith instead, I wasn't very good at it at first. I would start to say something controlling and then stop mid-sentence and try to cover it up by pointing to something shiny. Other times, just not saying anything controlling led me to feel like I had nothing to say to him. I felt like a mute. But my husband didn't seem to notice my struggles or my silence. Or if he did, it didn't bother him a bit. Quite the opposite. He was smiling more, talking more, and check this out. He was seeking out my company. I remember coming home one memorable day and his face lit up when he saw me. And that felt so good. In other words, when I stopped controlling, he stopped ignoring me. I had the key the whole time, but I didn't realize it. My husband wasn't rejecting me. He was just trying to avoid being stabbed by my porcupine barbs. When I got soft again, he was right there, ready to snuggle up to me and talk about his day. He was just sitting right next to me, even though I was just writing on my laptop. He wants to be nearby. Sometimes my husband still watches TV, but not that often. And when he does, it's my reminder. Hey, time to chill. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Inga was full of boiling anger and resentment that even though she made the most money, she also had to do more around the house because she was the only one who cared. Her husband was always putting her down as being wrong and criticizing her parenting. Even though she was a high achiever and she had everything on paper, she felt that her life was a disappointment. Then she got a glimpse of hope that she could improve her marriage single-handedly, but she was skeptical and pretty embarrassed to be reading an American book. But she gave it a try and it worked. Today, she is madly in love with her husband, and she's going to tell us how she did that. Inga, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you for being on the show with me today.
Hi, Laura. I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you. Well, start us off in the bad old days. What was happening at your house that made you feel so resentful?
Well, on surface, it all looked normal. I was good at hiding things and pretending to be just an ordinary family. It felt quite lonely that I had no one to share with, but I had to maintain the image. At the age of 35, I had all that I have strived for so far. I had a successful career in the bank with recognition and reputation that it came with. I had solid income. I was expert of the field. And I had a husband and an amazingly gifted boy. I mean, I was nobody from nowhere, and I had achieved all this on my own with persistence and hard work. I was an achiever. Nothing was normal inside myself, though. I was constantly angry or annoyed, or both. And I worked really hard to be positive, to think positive, to see my life in positive light. I had all those beautiful positive thinking quotes, but it didn't really help me because something always happened that made me angry and made me blow up. I couldn't control my emotions. And I had this feeling that my husband is there to contradict me, whatever I said. For example, if I shared a situation at work, he jumped in to stand for the other person and prove how I'm wrong. And he was often saying, you should take it easier. You're a boss. You can afford to be late for work. Let others work. That drove me mad. What do you mean, take it easy? I thought he had no idea what it takes to work in the corporate world, to pursue a career. He loved my income, but he didn't acknowledge my efforts. I felt alone and unsupported. I also felt constantly criticized about my parenting. I could receive comments like, oh, he's just a child. Don't be so strict with him. Or just the opposite. He's a boy. Don't pamper him so much. I could never do it right. And homekeeping stuff, it was awful. I felt like a maid, constantly picking up after everyone. I wanted to have a nice, clean home, but he didn't care, and he didn't even hide it. It was a mess, like long trail of mess. And if I wanted to do something in the kitchen, I had to shovel first. I didn't until I had some space on the counter, and I could turn my back and it would be full again. And he just mixed himself a drink, and off he went to watch some TV. Yes, the couch in front of TV. This was his favorite place. He could watch TV till 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. Empty glasses, sticky stains, leftover plates, bottles, crumbs, quite a usual scenery that he left behind him. And I had this, I was fuming, like boiling anger inside me, resentment that I was earning the most. And I was the only one who did things around the house, the only one who cared.
Wow.
And we didn't fight that much. It was more like a Cold War. I had the feeling that I have to defend myself all the time. And I was, trying to explain, use logic, but the better I prepared facts and arguments to support my point of view, the harder the resistance that I was getting back. And arguments to, I felt like my opinion didn't count. And whatever I said could be contradicted. I hated that.
Yeah. But you felt very lonely as well. Like you were longing for something in your marriage that was missing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I felt totally miserable. I had this feeling that I am at my best time of my life. I'm still young, but already achieved something. I'm full of energy and ideas, but I'm wasting this day. I'm going to waste tomorrow too. And I somehow asked myself, if this was my last day on earth, did I want to live it like this? And I realized that our days together could be limited too. Did I want the rest of them to be like this? Of course I didn't. And I had to change something. I was pretty used to have success, and failing my marriage was not on my agenda.
Was there a day when you said, okay, we can't keep going like this? Something has to give.
This was the day when I asked myself, do I want to live like this?
Yes.
This feeling of being wasted.
Yes.
I'm wasting my time. The days can be limited. This was the day.
Were you thinking about getting divorced?
This is an interesting question. I think no. Divorce was not on my agenda. I just wouldn't bear the embarrassment of getting divorced. Yeah. It was never on my agenda. I had to succeed.
Yes, I totally get it. So, but you were feeling like you were just going to face kind of a long, miserable marriage together. It sounds like.
Yes. That was the feeling, that I'm going to be miserable till the end of my days.
But at least no one will know about it.
Yes.
Okay. And so what did you do to try to fix it?
Well, have it ever happened to you that you just think about something and then all of a sudden you start receiving signs and things happen?
Yes.
Well, it was like that for me. It was one late December night around Christmas when I was lying in my bed alone, scrolling Facebook, and something caught my eye, and it asked, "Do you feel lonely?" Yes. I opened the ad, not expecting anything valuable, but it really spoke to my heart and woke up my curiosity. I signed up for a free webinar and bought the book that same night, The Empowered Wife. I read it on Kindle over a single breath, and could I relate to so many things? I felt I've been my worst enemy. It opened my eyes on how my actions can be contributing to the Cold War. And it finally started to make sense why my husband was contradicting me all the time, because I was know-it-all control freak.
This must have been a painful moment for you.
Yes, it was painful, but but it was the feeling was but I can do something about it.
So it was.
So I was achiever. I didn't.
That's right. So
I didn't dive into disappointment. I was then I can do something about it. I jumped up.
So it was
and wanted to do something.
Hope. There was hope mixed in with the pain, maybe equally. It sounds like.
Yeah.
So what did you start doing differently once you read this book? Well, first of all, and you felt this book was speaking to you, but you also had some embarrassment about it. Tell us about that.
Yes. I don't know how to explain that, but it felt that it's too much or it's too simple, or it can't work like that. Because it was American book, and the presumption or the block in my mind was that it's too easy. It's just the positive thinking, and I have read a lot of positive thinking books and quotes, and it was familiar, and it never really changed anything for me. I kind of took it, and it never stayed with me. Yes, when I read it, I liked it, but it didn't have any practical meaning.
Yes.
And it didn't give any practical change in my life. But this time it was very different. The structure that skills gave, it was so practical. And those cheat phrases, yes, sometimes I felt that it's hard to translate it in my language and to use it straightforward, and it sounded so weird. Nobody would ever say something like that. But the practicality of the skills really caught my attention. I can really, I saw how I can try it.
Yes. So, okay. So you got the book, and you what did you start doing differently first?
I must have done pretty a lot of things, but I think there are two main that I did. And yes, my first experiments were in secret because I was skeptical and quite embarrassed. And the question was, is it really true that I can change things single-handedly? And one thing that I did, it certainly started prioritizing my self-care. I realized for sure that if I felt like a maid, it was because of my own choice. My husband needed a wife, and my son needed a mom. None of them really asked for a maid. And if I was, it was because I chose to be one. And then the way to stop it becomes quite obvious, right? Just stop doing it.
It does. But it hadn't been before. So that was a pretty big change.
Yes.
So you stopped cleaning up after everybody.
Yes. And if I had to choose between cleaning my kitchen and self-care, I prioritized the second one. And this is also where it got really tricky, because a clean house was something that also made me happy.
Yes.
It made me really feel happy. And it means that I still had to clean it. Yes. But now I only did it to the extent that I didn't get resentful or angry. And sure enough, in the very beginning, my kitchen got messy because I got resentful very quickly.
Right.
There was piles of dirty dishes in the sink and on the counters, and crumbs on the floor and sticky dining table. Oof, disgusting.
So your kitchen was like your resentment meter. Like we could see how resentful Inga is by looking at her kitchen.
Yes.
Okay. And so, it's got, you're saying it was disgusting, and nobody wants to live like that. Okay. So carry on. So what did you do?
So it was one Sunday morning that I saw how I could change it, when my boys asked me to make pancakes. And I went into the kitchen. It was a mess again. And I was, for the first time, really brave to say, I love to make those pancakes and I really need help cleaning. And it was minutes later that my husband was washing the dishes, my 4-year-old vacuuming the floor. And I realized, all I had to do was ask for help. Yes, and soon after this, my husband suggested that maybe I should get house cleaning help.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I tell my cleaning lady that she saved my marriage.
Oh, she did. I love that. Okay, so now you have
Yes.
you didn't have a cleaning person before, and now you do.
Now I do, and I'm happy that I do.
Yes. Okay, so so you were prioritizing your self-care. So you're doing things to make yourself happy instead of cleaning the kitchen, cleaning up. And so, and how did that impact things too?
And first, it was question how I can self-care, how I can make myself happy. I didn't know how. Yeah. I was out. So what made me happy? It was not a habit to ask myself what makes me happy. How can I do that? And I'm lucky to live in a place where nature gives a lot of replenishment for the soul, and I use that a lot. Yes, long nature walks and listening to birds chirping, and I love summer. This is the great thing about seasons, to enjoy the summer and winter, the contrasts. So I gained a lot of inspiration there, and music. Yes, and I'm amazed. It's only 3 minutes to listen a song, and how it lifts your spirit. Wow! Especially if I can dance and sing along. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And how did this impact your feelings of anger?
It wasn't that straightforward, because the anger was bigger than just doing simple self-care.
Yes.
It's not that easy when it's like a system. It's like a natural reaction. Something happens and here I go, exploding, angry.
That's right. Yeah.
Like blaming someone.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to get it out of the system. And it was not that long ago when I first realized that it was with my son's teacher. She said something to me and I was, she probably had a bad day. And when I looked back to that situation was, is this the same person? Is this me? And it came quite natural. But it was a long journey to get out of that anger.
Okay. So you could have had a conflict with this teacher, but instead you gave her grace, and you felt like that was because you had softened somehow. Is that right?
Softened. Yes.
Wow.
I have softened, and even now when I watch myself on tape or I listen to my voice, it's so different. I used to hate it because it's like nagging, really nagging. And now it's different. Even my voice is different.
So how did your husband respond to you softening like this?
My husband have always supported my self-care, and previously there were a lot of situations when he said, go out, have some girl time or something, or when I wanted to share something with him, he said, you have a lot of girlfriends, go talk to them. And I was like, why do I need you? If I can't share this with you, why do I need you? Yeah. Why would I be married to you if I can't talk to you? Yeah. So and also going for walks, he has always supported that, and I always wanted to go together, and if I can't go together, I wouldn't go. So it was a change. It was a change. I was constantly, and it was about criticizing him too, that we should do those things like it's supposed to be, and you're not willing to do that. Why?
Yeah. Like he was a bad husband. So, all right. So the self-care though is going pretty good for you at this point, it sounds like.
Yeah, I love my self-care. That is indispensable. Of course, there are days that like everything feels gray and I feel grumpy. Of course, still there, but at least I have the perspective. How can I do that? And then those feelings are triggers for self-care. I know that I have to do self-care.
Yes. And so, but all of this felt pretty overwhelming. You just had the book. I remember you saying that you weren't sure how you were going to do all this work yourself. So how did you deal with that?
At first, I was trying to do that on my own. I tried to involve a friend of mine, and she read and said, "Me, not for me, not for me." Yeah, and I was. It was almost a year when I was trying to practice those skills single-handedly, and it was hard. It was hard to be alone in that, with no one to share with no one to say, "Oh, do you know what I did yesterday?" So how I managed to make a win out of situation. And yes, I needed support with that, and this was the reason I wanted to join the community that I'm really much enjoying now.
Yes, yes. So you have trained to be a coach. You certified. You are now a coach. And how does that impact your marriage?
First of all, it keeps me accountable and keeps the skills alive in my life, because it was quite easy to fall back into old habits. And I want to practice what I preach, for one. And I'm surrounded with other coaches, and this community is such a support network. Absolutely.
And so what's your marriage like now?
My relationship is flourishing. My husband supports me in full. He takes care of me and goes out of his way to lighten my load. For example, he always makes sure that my car's gas tank is full, that I have food in the fridge when I work at home. He supports my self-care. He looks after me and encourages my walks, sport activities. He supported that I quit my job and start a new career. And he bought a car that he haven't considered buying, just because I expressed a desire to have this brand. I can't count it all. The list is endless. The way he smiles at me so warmly when he sees me.
Oh.
He invites me to spend time together. We're going bike rides, dinners, beach walks. And we're a team regarding parenting. Not only does he take care of our son when I'm doing my self-care, he's supporting my decisions. No override, no criticism. I'm often borrowing his brain when I have a challenging situation with my son, and his ideas and solutions work perfectly.
Oh,
yeah. They're boys, right? They're boys. They know
they're
each
both
other.
boys. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So
and he helps me keep the house clean.
He helps you keep the house clean?
Yes.
The same guy with the drink and the crumbs and
yes.
The same man.
The same man. It's the same man that I've married. Yeah. And in the bathroom, after he has shaved his hair, like the couch in front of TV, his stuff after he'd come from home hunting. yeah. And there's a story. Once he was going away for a couple of days, and our son was going with him. I was at work that day. And can you imagine how it looks after someone who's been gathering his bags to leave for a few days?
yeah. He's just trying to get out. Yeah.
Knowing how much I appreciate a clean house, they have picked up everything, vacuumed the floors, and put away all dirty dishes in the kitchen just to surprise me.
Oh my
and I
God.
was surprised and happy when I came home.
Wow. So you're no longer the maid, and they're happy to delight you, your husband and your son, it sounds like. I love that story. Now, you also struggled. Your husband's a snorer, I believe.
Yes, that is a very special story about snoring.
Tell us about
My husband is, he, it's not he used to be, he is a snorer.
He is. That's right. He is a snorer.
Yes. And it used to bother me really, really heavily because I had this jingle in my head that he should get healthier, eat healthier, do some sports, lose weight, and do everything about his snoring. And here it was. He was not doing anything, and I was the one to suffer because he snored. I couldn't sleep. And the anger was there like 24/7. I was angry during the night because he snored. And I was angry during the day because I haven't had proper sleep because he snored.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I was really angry on that. And one night, it was something about 3 a.m. in the morning. I woke up from his snoring again, and I felt that anger boiling, screaming, and literally feeling the pain in my body. And it scared me. How much being so angry is hurting me. It's really hurting me. And I realized that this is not serving me. This is just not serving me. And, in the middle of night, I couldn't do much about it, right? And I was thinking, what can I do that would serve me better? And out of, I can't do anything, I thought, okay, I'm going to just do gratitudes here. And I was starting to count gratitudes because he was working hard and he was tired, and therefore he was snoring, and he was nervous, willing to make income for the family, and therefore it was stress for him, and therefore he snored. And then I counted those gratitudes for him, and what happened? I fall asleep in seconds. I don't remember. I don't remember myself twisting in bed and not being able to fall asleep. I fell asleep immediately. And I had to repeat this exercise a few nights. But now, in his snoring, I hardly ever wake up from his snoring.
Wow.
I don't think he has stopped. It's just my brain is wired now differently.
Wow. Inga, I love that story. You changed your whole experience of him just by choosing a different thought to focus on while you were laying in bed listening to him loudly saw logs, right? So I love that story. So Inga, I remember your husband also has been a heavy drinker, and this has been a source of conflict for your marriage. So tell me about that.
Yeah, this was one of the decisions that I had to make to relinquish control over my husband's life. And it involved a lot of things like spending, drinking, gambling, clothing, parenting, joking, working, all of it. And some of it came quite easy, but the drinking was hard. I've seen its damaging effect on health. I've seen drinking destroy families. And I was really scared that I will lose my husband this way. After all, I wanted our happily ever after, right? I couldn't accept it, especially as it came together with going out, getting into trouble, overeating, and not remembering the next day. And I used to say things like, why can't you just drink a little? Why do you have to overdose? Or why can't you just drink at home? Why do you have to wander around and get into trouble? And he never even listened. And when I read the book, The Empowered Wife, there was this line which spoke to my heart, and it said, when a man feels that his actions are not accepted, he feels compelled to repeat that again and again. So it meant that by trying to reduce this, I was actually criticizing him and therefore pushing him to do that again. Now it made perfect sense. I couldn't control it. And then again, even if he stopped drinking, there was no guarantee that I won't lose him all of a sudden, right? Car accidents happen, health issues happen even to healthy people. And he's a policeman. So his job is dangerous too. And for me, it was one more proof that I couldn't control it. The hardest part, though, was to accept that my worst case scenario can come true, and his drinking can destroy his life and our family. And there is nothing I could control about it. I knew that if he doesn't want to change, there's no way I can force him. If that was his fate and it was meant to be, then I can't change it. And I could only spoil the time that we have together by trying. It was very painful because I also felt as if I'm giving up my dream of happily ever after. But I had this new plan now. I wanted to relinquish control and stop pushing him. I choose to expect the best of my husband and trust that he's a grown-up man. He knows what he's doing and he will handle that in his own timing and his own way. And to my great surprise, I came home from work one day and he said, "Honey, I'm going on a fast as of today till Easter." I was, "What? Fast?" So it meant 40 days without alcohol and meat. So, and yes, no, those fasts are quite regular. Before Christmas, before Easter, and now and then, all of a sudden, I need a break. Now I hear him saying things like, "Oh, this drinking is degrading me. I should stop." Or in the morning, after he's drank last night, "Why couldn't I just stop with that little bit, what was left in the bottle? Why did I have to open the second one?" So this is how it has worked for me.
Wow. And you had a neighbor come over and sort of confirm that you have changed this situation. Tell us that story.
It was really funny for me as I watched them. The neighbor came in and he said, "I want to have a drink." And he was somehow inviting my husband to join a men's club to get the possibility to get out and drink without wives nagging them. And my husband looked at this neighbor and said, "No interest, not interested in that. I can have a drink at home. I don't have to get away." And then that neighbor was like, "No way, you're kidding me. Your wife should be nagging you." No, my wife doesn't nag me about that. Because I know it's no use. It's no use if I'm gonna nag him. I'm gonna be just pushing him.
Yes.
To do it more.
Yes. I mean, some would call that a miracle that you changed your behavior and that has impacted your husband's drinking for the better, it sounds like.
I think the man is the same, but I have let him the free space. I have let him finally live his own life, not being on his paper. And so having this space, he's able to see what's his life and what does he want to do with that. So, and if he wants to change, he will change that.
Yes. Yes. And he has made some significant changes already, it sounds like.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. He still drinks. Yeah. He still drinks, but it's very different.
Wow. Very inspiring, Inga, because there are so many women with husbands who drink heavily that think he is an alcoholic and there's nothing she can do about it. And she just has to suffer. But that's not the case. Your situation, your story illustrates that she actually has tremendous power, tremendous influence if she uses it wisely.
Mm-hmm. And I get those women. It is painful. It's a painful place to be, to live with a man who drinks. And I was scared. I was really scared that I'm going to lose him. And this is not what I wanted at all.
No. So what's a tip for a woman who is feeling like you were, where she's the maid, she's the only one who does all these things, it's lonely, her marriage feels estranged, but she is too embarrassed to get divorced. Maybe they're not fighting either, like you guys didn't fight. So but she wants to feel that connection. She wants to see his smile, big smile at her, like what you have now, and have him surprise her by cleaning the house before he leaves for a trip. So where should she start?
Well, the tip, if she's like me and she's listening to this podcast, she must be an achiever.
Yes.
So the thing I want to tell is that there is a way out of this, and just take these skills, dive in, give it a try, dive in, and see what you can make it out of this. It's within your capacity and within your power to change things.
Yeah.
It's about decision.
I love your big smile on your face when you say that too. So, and what if you could go back in time and tell yourself what you know now back then? What would you say?
There is a way. This was my biggest thing, that I didn't see a way out. And I would tell her, there is a way. Take these skills, try them. They will give you what you want.
Yes, yes. Well, Inga, this is really inspiring to hear your beautiful story of how you created sounds like a wonderful marriage. You were saying you're madly in love with your husband now?
Totally. How can I not love him when he smiles so softly at me?
I love it. Beautiful. And I'm sure your son benefits also from this beautiful family, home environment that you created single-handedly.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he is. He's totally different. He feels that we are no longer splitted. We're a team, and he doesn't try to, one part, the other part. He doesn't try to use arguments between us to get what he wants. He knows that it's no longer working.
Wow. So he's got a real home court advantage that was missing before, it sounds like, with that unity between you.
Yes. And they're a team with my husband too. They love to spoil me. And my son often encourages, Daddy, we should buy some flowers for mommy. She will be happy.
So cute. So sweet. Well, super, super great to hear your story and just hear what's possible for an achiever to achieve in her marriage. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing it with us today. It's wonderful.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you for the skills.
My pleasure. Totally my pleasure. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week Award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that's got me dumbfounded this week is from a widely syndicated columnist, and it comes to me by way of one of the coaches on our campus, which I so appreciate. Shout out to her. Thanks so much. I was so repulsed by this so-called expert's response that I rolled my eyes really far and I could barely get them back in my head. In the letter, a lonely wife is wondering why her husband won't do anything with her, even though he will with his friends, even after she spent a lot of energy asking nicely, nagging, and cajoling. Then, even when he did agree to do things with her, he was pouty and fault-finding, and they ended up in a big fight. She goes on to say that although she loves her husband, she feels like live-in domestic help, and that they don't have kids because she feels like her husband is too much of a kid himself, who just watches TV and plays video games all the time. She asks if she should divorce him and ends with this heartbreaking sentence, quote, "I've tried to talk to him about how I feel, but he thinks I'm being critical and gets defensive and angry." So poor thing. I remember feeling exactly the same way when I thought that saying how I felt was the same as license to criticize him. I could have written that letter myself before I realized that asking, nagging, and cajoling were never going to get me what I wanted from my husband, which was for him to want to spend time with me. Right there in the letter, this struggling wife tells us that she nags and cajoles and that he avoids her, even though he's happy to spend time with his friends, and says that he feels criticized. So for me, and for the coach who sent this to me, who said she also could have written this letter pre-intimacy skills, it seems pretty clear that this tragically uninformed woman has no idea that she's being all kinds of disrespectful to her husband. She's probably not aware that most mere mortal men respond exactly as she describes when they feel disrespected. So she's suffering needlessly for want of the right information and support for her marriage, which is just heartbreaking, so hard and frustrating. No wonder she feels hopeless. When I hear this kind of struggle, I get excited. I know it's perverse. It's because this wife has so much power to just clean up her side of the street once she sees what is likely in her blind spot. Probably no one ever taught her the intimacy skills, and she's unaware. She's disrespectful and controlling. And in my experience, if she's open to being accountable for her part in their conflict, she could probably clear this up in time to laugh and hold hands with her husband this weekend. But how does this columnist respond? Well, I've edited it for length, but in summary, she advises, quote, "Time to imagine leaving him. It may be hard to accept, but consider your other choices to keep living exactly the way you're now living," end quote. Forever. And let's not forget, ever. So according to the expert, there is nothing this self-described nagging critical wife can do but leave her husband or accept her lonely, painful marriage the way it is. Those are the only two choices. And if there was any doubt that this wife is the victim in this situation, the columnist spells it out for her, writing, "Your choices are bad because by refusing to put any effort into the marriage, your husband is leaving you no other choices. Fortunately, drastic action does have an entry level. Marriage counseling." No joke. This is what she wrote. "He seems the type to resist, but try. If he refuses to go, the next level up is a trial separation. Again, do it now." End quote. Isn't it breathtaking how quickly she has vilified this woman's husband, who didn't exactly get to have his day in court? She says he's the type to resist marriage counseling. And there's not one bit of encouragement for this wife to examine her side of the street. And while she must feel like she's putting a lot of effort into her marriage, it's unfortunately the wrong kind of effort. I can't say I would blame her husband for fearing he might be ambushed at marriage counseling like he was by this columnist. After all, the goal of marriage counseling in this context is to force him to change his wicked, inconsiderate ways, not for the wife to examine how the nagging, cajoling, and criticizing may be contributing to the tension, or to illuminate that her husband may simply and logically be keeping his distance to avoid the continuous barbs from his porcupine wife. There's so much bad relationship advice in these few paragraphs. It's hard to narrow in on the very worst part, but I'm going to go with the shockingly cynical opening line. For that reason, the advice that it's, quote, "time to imagine leaving him," is the very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about how to cope with the threat of divorce. In the meantime, I hope you're still having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I love the facial recognition technology on my phone, but I'd like to know why it doesn't seem to recognize me in the morning.